time and space. Everywhere and anywhere, every star that ever was. Where do you want to start?
We've left the court of Kubla Khan, but we've lost our keys. Let's go to the safe and quiet planet of Marinus to search for them. I'm Ian.
And I'm Mark, and welcome to All of Time and Space. This time round we're going to be looking at the Keys of Marinus. And on the other side of this trailer we're going to be joining Jim from the Krynoid Podcast.
Grandfather, I wonder where we are.
Well, one thing's sure, we're not at Southend.
Sea of Acid. You know, in all my travels, I've never come across anything like this before.
For the sake of all my people, you must find the keys for me.
Stop it! Go away! Don't you dare come near me! He's alive! Oh, he's alive! This whole place is one big booby trap.
Please, I only want to help you.
No!
The murderer is without any doubt in the chamber.
Kill her.
Ian!
Kill her.
When the final key is inserted, my power is absolute. It's coming again. The jungle is coming. When the whispering starts, it's death, I tell you. Death.
So, joining us this week, we have one of my many heroes, our good friend Jim. Hi, Jim.
Hello. I'm very flattered to hear that I'm one of your heroes. You are likewise to me, sir.
Oh, mate. Oh,
And so you, Mark.
Shall I just go now and just
No, you as well.
leave you guys to it?
This is a three-way
nice,
loving, I'll have you know.
Thank you. Oh, hello.
Lucky it's only audio, eh?
Start as you mean to go on.
Well, I'm glad I went and got a cup of tea now. If it's all going to get a
Yeah.
bit spicy. So we are here, obviously, to talk about the Keys of Marinus. But before we do that, we have the small matter of my quiz. Now, what I like to do is kind of start the show with a little quiz, just to kind of cement in the listeners' minds what's happening in the kind of zeitgeist when the story was first broadcast. So stuff that's in the news, stuff that is happening, sporting, all that kind of thing. Now the problem is, because we've kind of already done that with our episode on The Edge of Destruction, which was broadcast in the same month, I've kind of used up all the good questions. So what I've done instead, because Keys of Marinus is the fifth story in Doctor Who, tonight's quiz is all about the number 5. So how it works is very simple. If you know what the answer to a question is, you say it with your face, and we're going to work on the theory that I can tell the difference between your two voices and will thus afford points to the right party correctly.
All right, Gov.
Okay? Is
Okay,
everybody...
No probs.
I think we've got some extra people on the line. No matter. So, bearing in mind the answer to most of these is probably going to be something to do with the number 5. Here is the quiz. Question 1. Whose racing car was Red 5, and in what year did they win the Formula 1 World Championship?
James Hunt.
Oh, good Lord.
I know nothing.
Neither of you. Neither of you.
Okay, I'll have a guess.
Go on,
I'll
Mark,
say Alan Prost.
Oh, for it was Sir the Lord Nigel of Mansell who won in 1992. So
Oh, him.
After Ayrton Senna died, there was no point watching it anymore, was there?
Yeah, but that was 2 years after. So
There's no point in watching it anyways.
Well, yeah.
No offence.
I'm giving you a virtual high five here, Jim.
You're not my hero anymore. Right, question,
I knew it wouldn't
question
take
2.
long.
Question 2. You this might go down slightly better. I don't know. What was the 5th book in Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker trilogy?
Oh lordy.
It's the one that's the size of a pamphlet, isn't it?
Is it the Salmon of Doubt?
No, that was the uncompleted 3rd Dirk Gently novel, I think. I can't remember now. It's been so long since I've read it. The correct answer, anyway, is
So Long and Thanks for All the Fish?
no. That was the last one of the 80s. It was Mostly Harmless, which was also published in 1992. So far, all of my questions seem to be deriving from the year 1992. Question 3. In 1992, whose 5th album was called Keep the Faith?
Bon Jovi.
You cannot get easier than a question about Bon Jovi. That is a point for you, sir. Ding.
Thank God.
I need a sound effect of a little bell when I go ding. Can we do that? Do we have the tech?
No.
Right. I'll tell you what. I'll just say ding.
I'm a sore loser.
Fine.
This is a can-don't podcast you've got here.
Yeah.
Question 4. And don't worry, there's only 2 more questions. In what year, and I will accept the closest answer, was Beethoven's 5th Symphony first performed? Give you a clue, it's not 1992.
Thanks.
It's a couple of years before, I think.
He's on
I don't even know what century that is, I'm afraid to say. Being a complete heathen and Philistine.
I'm not into decomposers.
The decomposing composer says less of them every year. No, don't know.
Right, well, so I looked on Wikipedia about 3 hours ago when I was writing this quiz, and it turns out it was first performed in 1808 in Vienna. So that's interesting, that's a fact. You can stow that away and trot it out, perhaps at a dinner party to look cultured.
Impress your friends. Yeah.
Precisely. Final question, guys. Are you ready?
Yep.
Right, good. Fingers poised on whatever. I mean, there's no button, so poise your fingers on whatever you like.
Larynxes.
For 5 points, name the 5 stories broadcast in the 5 Faces of Doctor Who in 1981.
An Unearthly Child.
He's off.
Am I allowed to butt in, or are you
The
on your way?
Crotons.
Wait for Mark to get it wrong, and then you can leap in at the end.
Okay.
We've got Unearthly Child, we've got the Crotons.
Carnival of Monsters.
3 for 3.
Logopolis.
Mark, you've missed one. I'm going to have to throw this over to our guest, Jim Cameron.
3 Doctors?
It was the 3 Doctors. You have a big, fat, whopping 6 points from this quiz, which is easily the highest score ever. And you are duly crowned this week's winner.
Congratulations, Jim. Well done.
I'm not quite sure I got 6 points out of it, but thanks anyway.
It was 5 for the last question, you see, and you got the question about Bon Jovi. Right. Okay, so that's my bit done. I'm just going to sit back now and listen to you guys go at it with the Keys of Marinus.
Nice turn of phrase there, Ian.
Yeah, lovely.
So, Keys of Marinus. Jim, it's a bit of a divisive one, I feel.
It is.
Some people really love it, some people not so much. Which camp do you fall into?
I'm a lover, not a fighter. I love it. I love this one. I really do. I love the Philip Hinchcliffe novelisation, which was my first contact with it, of course. Only being a young lad. And I absolutely loved the book. It just blew me away, and I remember writing a terrible sort of copyright infringing version of it myself afterwards, which is almost exactly the same and therefore utterly pointless.
We'll have the PDF in the show notes for anyone who's interested.
Can I just ask a quick question? Was that the novelisation that had the TARDIS on the front cover and the TARDIS looked sort of weirdly grey?
Yes, it was the least sort of illustrative cover they've ever done, I think. Yes, the TARDIS in space, which doesn't actually happen in Keys of Marinus. Exactly. It lands at the beginning and then leaves. No. So, but yeah, I love the book. And, of course, Terry Nation can write a cracking science fiction adventure. It's often the same cracking science fiction adventure. But
I think he was still in his early days
He was,
in terms
yeah.
of Doctor Who. So
and this is quite
I think he
different.
still had a few original ideas before
He did.
before things started to go slightly south. But
He uses a lot of these ideas in Blake 7, of course, which he later went on to write.
yes, yeah.
And yeah, it feels to me, because there's so many different locations and stuff, it feels a bit like one of those sort of portmanteau horror films that, like Amicus and people like that used to make.
Yeah.
Because you get this almost some of the same cast in them, which isn't quite the same as those things, but they're set very kind of discrete stories with the kind of linking theme of finding the keys and stuff. I do like a quest narrative, which is this is the first one of those for Doctor Who, and it's a general kind of epic quality to the whole thing. Epic in a different way to Marco Polo, and this must have seemed like quite an antidote to Marco Polo after, what was it, 7 weeks of historical, and now we're into 6 weeks of pretty solid sci-fi, I think.
Yes. So, Ian, had you seen Keys of Marinus before watching it for this?
I had not seen the Keys of Marinus before for watching it for this.
First thoughts?
This is, for me, very much the story where the money ran out.
Yeah. I mean, even its staunchest defenders will admit that it's somewhat lacking in the old budget department.
Yeah, I think it had the ethos and the drive of some of those 40s RKO cliffhanger serials, like King of the Rocket Men or and it had the ambition of those, and it was trying to do that, and it gets away with it because we're all very benevolent, uncritical viewers, but it did look cheap.
Yeah, you can't get away from that. I think, in my opinion, I'd rather see something like that is ambitious rather than something that might have a bit more money in the budget but is a bit dull and interminable. At least it means they're actually trying.
For instance.
You said that, not me. We will come to that eventually. So I think the sheer ambition of it is really impressive to me in terms of what they wanted the story to be. I think the world building is something I really like about it. The fact that for a fairly limited space, I think they're still at Lime Grove at this point. Each week, as Jim said, you're getting this different location, so it does feel like a real world. It's not just, very often in Doctor Who you land on a planet and the planet consists of half a dozen people the Doctor meets, and then they bugger off again, and that's the entire planet. In that one little sort of scene. Whereas I feel this really has a bit of scale to it, albeit from the bargain bin at IKEA. But
well, we see sort of 5 very small corners of 5 countries or whatever. So yes, in that regard, we do build a world. It's a world that has a courtroom in it. It's a world that has a freezing, hairy, fat, rapey guy. It's a world that has the world's shortest rope bridge. We will come to these things, and I will lay out my grievances at the appropriate time.
Okay,
but
let's start positive, shall we?
I thought it was, in terms of the ambition and in terms of the overall plot, I thought it was wonderful.
I think those little mini subs are kind of cute. I think they're cool. Maybe not so much the little model ones, but when they come up close to them and start opening them up, I think they're pretty cool.
Now, I have a problem straight away with that. So they kneel beside one of them that's just come out of the acid ocean. And the first thing the Doctor does is slap his hands on it and go, we must open it. It would have burned through the flesh of his hand.
Yeah, that does get raised on the commentary track.
Good.
And the director is very quick to say, well, that's obviously a directorial mistake.
There was supposed to be a line in the script, wasn't there, about that, but it didn't make it to the final version. So they had thought about it.
Plus, the Doctor's a Time Lord, so he might be able to touch acid where we can't. So, of course, we don't know he's a Time Lord yet, but, retcons. I think with what money they did have, that pyramid model is pretty cool.
I thought that looked fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I like the forced perspective when they actually get closer to the thing.
Yeah.
Luckily, the actors don't go too close because they start casting shadows onto what is supposed to be a long corridor.
As we've said numerous times before on this show, back in 64, with a 425 lines TV.
Yeah, tiny screen.
I bet it looked pretty good.
Yeah, I bet it did, yeah.
I mean, I didn't realise it was probably a cloth backdrop for the first 2 or 3 shots it appeared in. I thought, oh, that's good. They've built an entire kind of space colonnade, and then I thought, no, it's probably a backcloth, isn't it? So it was good. And then I think once you move inside the Citadel, that's where the money really ran out.
They're quite empty rooms, aren't they? I think the conscience machine looks good, and it's got lots of working lights and stuff, isn't it? And it responds to various things being poked into it. And it's got that kind of building.
Don't we all?
Given the opportunity, and it's got a sort of building set of notes, isn't it? When Yartek starts poking the keys in towards the end, each note adds to the kind of overall sort of chord that's being formed. I like that. I think it's very clever.
Sticking to the audio side of things, I think the score is really good for this one.
Yeah, it is.
If you're looking for some sort of positives to take out of it before Ian completely destroys it.
I didn't really notice the score, and maybe I should go back and have a little Spotify session and try and pick up on it, because not that it's I generally never do notice the background music, even during the Murray Gold era. I'm there for the story, and anything else that's
the Murray Gold era where you can't hear the dialogue for the Murray Gold music.
Well, I wondered those first 10 years where everyone sort of didn't say anything for 50 minutes. I did wonder how the drama could have been improved. But so unless it's like sort of really stand out, obtrusively awful Sea Devils, I don't really notice the music.
Oh, I've grown to love the music of the Sea Devils. I hated it when I first heard it, but I've really grown to love it, particularly the main theme. If you get a chance to check it out, I think I've shared this with you, Ian.
Yes, you have.
There's a brilliant remix or a reimagining of it by Paul Hartnoll from Orbital.
Yeah.
And it is brilliant. Really good.
Write that down.
Yes, I dropped some E's, and I was lost in single-minded pursuit of the groove. But anyway, so
getting back to Marinus.
So with the music, was there a sort of different theme for each of the various locations that they visited, or was it a linking piece of music that kind of made it holistic? Either way, it's a winner. You see, I'm setting you up for a win here.
That's a good question. The Vord have their own theme, don't they? It's a kind of high trilling flute, which is unusual because normally these days, Menace is done with bass notes, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Then this is done with a high trilling flute, which follows them around, I think. But there's lots of bam, bam, bam all the way through to punctuate moments of high excitement. But I'd have to watch it again to see if he's been, actually forming themes for each of the different locations. If he did, that would be brilliant, wouldn't it? But if he has, I haven't noticed.
We need to address the elephant in the room, really, with the Vord, don't we?
The wetsuit in the room.
The white, clean bondage scatmen perverts. Yes. What lazy jokes can we make about them?
I think this story does a lot to really push the boundaries. It introduces BDSM characters, the Vord.
Yep.
There's a gay icon a little bit further down the line, which I'm sure we'll come to.
Oh,
I don't mean Barbara, obviously, but
is this the trouserless Altos we're talking about?
Yeah, very possibly. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Yes.
Oh my God. So what I read, what I understand is that Terry Nation either was tasked with or came up with of his own volition this kind of desire to emulate the success of the Daleks, which only went out a couple of weeks previously, by having another iconic villain that was easily mimicable for kids in the playground. So where the Daleks had a kind of unique way of moving and a very distinctive sound, the Vord have absolutely nothing that kids around the world can really latch onto, apart from a costume, which kids aren't going to have. So I'm wondering how he thought this was going to be an iconic villain.
Well, they could have kids.
I thought they were fairly creepy in their own way.
They are creepy, and kids can pretend to knife each other in the playground. That's all very healthy.
They already do in Essex, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I mean, they learned the lesson from the scissors in Edge of Destruction,
well,
obviously.
Yeah. And the other thing, of course, is you can mimic tripping over your flippers in the playground as well.
Oh, I laughed at that bit. That was incredible.
That's a cracker, isn't it? Poor bloke.
And we meet Arbitan, don't we? Who's George Coulouris. Was he? He was in
Citizen
something
Kane.
big, wasn't he? Was it Citizen Kane? Yeah.
Yeah, he's got so much exposition in this. He can't remember it all, can he? Unfortunately, bless him.
Poor guy.
He's the exposition machine in this. And yeah, he fluffs almost as much as Hartnoll, but he's only in one episode.
You just reminded me of a Billy Fluff.
Which one have you got? Because I've written one down.
I think my particular favourite one is where Susan's shoe melts in the acid pool.
Yeah.
And he says, "Well, if you were wearing her shoes, you could have given them to her."
Yes, that was.
You could have lent her hers. What?
Yeah.
Never mind.
Bless.
The one that I wrote down, and this might not even be a fluff, it might just be a really bad line of dialogue, but I think Barbara asks him if it might be an ice ocean or some such, and he says, "Not in this climate, besides it's too warm."
Tautology there, I think.
Yes. If I had an index file, besides, I could look it up in the index file. Yes. So, but otherwise, I think Hartnoll was on pretty good form in this, and obviously, if we, I don't know if we're going to go through it sequentially or just sort of hop around, but towards the end of the story.
Is it helped by the fact he had a 2-week holiday? That probably took a bit of pressure off,
I would have thought
think.
so, and it probably helped us as well, I think.
Yes, but he comes back refreshed, doesn't he, from that 2-week holiday, because he's got the courtroom stuff where he's bouncing around with energy, isn't he? Which he really isn't at the beginning of this story. So it works.
He was absolutely twinkling, wasn't he? He was on fire at the end of the story.
Yeah, he was definitely. Yeah, but it's a punishing schedule, and they've been doing it for since
crazy,
Unearthly Child to here without a break, haven't they? But at least he hadn't had a break at this stage. Some of the others might have done, but yeah. But it's the Iain and Barbara show at this moment in the show's history anyway, really. So they carry it without any problem at all, I think.
And Susan.
No, I can't agree with that.
So I'm just leaving a gap there so I can insert a tumbleweed.
She's absolutely unbearable in this story.
I've put in my notes, is she a toddler? Because at one point, Barbara has to actually put her down for a nap because she's so tired.
Yeah. I've written down 3 words under my Susan category heading. I'm wondering if I need to read all 3 of them out on what is a family podcast. But what I've
I have to get the beat machine ready.
What I've written down under Susan is fucking shut up. This, and obviously she's not been very well served since the first episode of the first story, but I think the character reaches what I very much hope is an absolute nadir in this run of episodes, because literally
she's pretty bad in Reign of Terror.
Don't speak too soon there, Iain.
Well,
keep your powder dry, son.
Aren't I the lucky boy for taking this journey?
Yeah.
She just literally turns around, screams, gets grabbed, screams, hears things, screams, wakes up, screams, falls asleep. Jesus. You feel so sorry for the actress that was all she was getting by this point.
Yeah, her finest hour is in the, well, they call it a pilot episode, don't they? But it's the when they first filmed episode 1 of An Earthly Child that didn't get shown until they redid it. That's her finest hour, and we technically we don't even see it. So yeah, it's a bit of a shame all round for Carol Ann Ford. But even I mean, she's very underwritten, but she could be less irritating with it, I think.
If she could just be trained to scream in the key of F, I think it would be much less distressing for all if only there was a producer that had that kind of vision. Oh my god.
Can you do that? Can you do that in a less harrowing key, please?
Yeah. Could you lower? Just just.
They should have got Cleo Lane in to do it, I think.
Oh God.
So maybe
Blimey.
I don't know. Is there much? I liked her silk dress that she requested in the section where they go to the magic place where you can have anything you want.
I thought they did that really
Except
well,
trousers.
considering the sort of technical limitations back then.
Absolutely,
That's really well
It's
done.
not like you can sort of, use CSO or anything like that, or any sort of. They couldn't really edit a great deal either because it was so prohibitively expensive. That's why they tended to leave in all the billy fluffs and that sort of stuff. So to be able to achieve that, I thought was pretty good. I thought they did a decent job of that.
They did. I mean, it's two halves of a set, isn't it? There's the nice half and the grotty half.
Yeah.
And you've got a barber in one and the rest of them in the other, and they just mix between the two cameras, don't they? Really cleverly done.
Yeah.
Very effective. And a
Yeah,
great
I thought
idea
that
as
was-
well. But great ideas don't always work on screen, but this one does.
Yeah.
I would
we
agree.
witnessed the brains of Morphoton.
The brains of Morphoton.
What did you think of those, then, Ian?
Now, were they the little bulbous gentlemen in the tanks with the big eye stalks?
They're no gentlemen.
I thought they were, and this is actually a wider point which takes in pretty much every character in the whole story. They were very well spoken, as if they'd been to an English public school, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, like the old boy in the place with all the traps.
Yeah,
He's incredibly posh as well.
It was.
Do you mean, was it Edmund Warwick?
Edmund Warwick, yeah,
who shows up later as
the dead,
Doctor Who.
the dead spit of William Hartnoll, of course. When he plays
yeah.
the replica robot.
Can't tell
in
them
the
apart.
chase.
Yeah,
Are you
the
fool?
living
You do
crest.
not look like their race. It was brilliant.
Yeah, everyone in it was just so plummy and awfully BBC posh RP.
You have to
Even
remember, Ian, we're closer to 1960 than we are to 1970. So we're not quite. We're getting into the swinging 60s, but we're not quite there yet.
at
You
what
can't, you
age?
can't have ghastly provincial accents on the BBC.
Oh no, terribly.
I haven't really studied much history beyond what you learn at secondary school, which is the two world wars and the period in between. But when did Britain have, say, a middle and working class introduced? Was that in the 70s, or was that later even than that?
They were all in a huge cage when anything was filmed in the 1960s. They weren't allowed anywhere near it.
Poor old Barbara. She does her best to try and smash those glass cases, but she only manages to get one, doesn't she?
Yes,
I
I
don't know if she's
didn't really understand.
lost her glasses or a contact or something.
Do you think her contacts shot out when she smashed the first
Maybe,
one?
yeah.
And after that, everything
Swinging
was
away
all
all over the place, flailing around.
Yeah, I mean, maybe in the budget they could only afford to break one of those glasses because
maybe
they'd been loaned them by some department store.
Remember, Jackie, just one, love.
I thought the little wrist devices they had were pretty cool.
Yeah, the time. What do they call them? The thingy dials. Oh, I don't remember. I've only
Travel
watched
dials.
this about a dozen times. Yes, travel dials.
Travel dials, I think they call them. Yeah. Yeah, I thought they were pretty neat.
Yeah, it's good.
That's quite a good visual effect.
I
Does
like
the job.
they had to walk off to a black part of the set.
Yes, that
Before
was wonderful, wasn't it? They had to keep hopping over there.
The strange, they have that kind of pop noise that when it disappears. So later on, when you understand what's going on, they just disappear off screen. You just hear the pop, don't you? Which is quite a clever way of getting around having to do that each time.
I think we need to really discuss Altos at this point, don't we?
Oh boy.
Okay, so I mean the costume, sweet baby Jesus. I mean, wow, that was pretty ahead of its time, wasn't it? Really?
I think there's a couple of scenes.
Didn't
you
leave
can
an
tell what
awful lot to the
religion is.
imagination. Well, they mention this in the commentary, and did you notice that he doesn't blink ever?
Yeah, it's disturbing. They mention it, don't they?
It's really freaky.
The actual dialogue that he doesn't blink. He looks like a kind of deviant Rick Mail, doesn't he? Or even more deviant Rick Mail.
I wondered if he was played by a young Richard E. Grant. To be honest, his performance struck me as that bad.
I had a totally different thing come to my mind.
Wow.
I suddenly, for some reason, I was taken back to Kevin Eldon's character, Simon Quinlan, the King of Hobbies.
Yes.
Now drink your weak lemon drink.
Weak lemon drink, yes. Yeah.
Well, Altos, I think,
similar.
Altos was the weak lemon drink of supporting characters. So yes, he had this bizarre kind of half Roman centurion, half I don't know what outfit on. And he was another incredibly posh, well-spoken, but delivered in that weird, unblinking, frankly, lizardy way.
There's a brilliant bit, isn't there, towards the end of the millennium when they find out that woman has captured Susan, and they work out that she spills the beans back, doesn't she? And he says, "Right, we go back." It's just lovely Alexandra Palace pronunciation.
We go back.
We go back.
It was incredible. So
I did feel for him when he was in the Arctic, though, or the frozen waste, the tundra. Christ alive.
Well,
although in reality he would have been absolutely baking hot, so he was probably loving it, whereas everyone else is wrapped up in their furs, sweating their unmentionables.
What do we think of that rather sensual moment where Ian Chesterton rubs his very scrawny thighs?
Yeah, that was...
lucky to get that past the censors, I think.
I mean, right? Because I nearly fainted. I nearly had a hot flush from the homoerotic charge inherent in that beautiful spectacle.
I know on a well, not quite a similar note, because he seemed to be quite enjoying it, but in the
we'd have known if he was
cabin,
enjoying it.
Yeah, he wouldn't be able to hide it, would he?
In the cabin when
physical reaction.
Barbara is being attacked by the rapey hunter. What's his name again?
Vasor.
Rapey hunter, sure.
Vasor, yeah. Vasor. In the commentary, they mention, we have to ask, did you have any specific sort of ideas of how this was going to play out? Because obviously for a kids show, you are effectively showing someone really looking like they're going to attempt to try and rape one of the regular cast members. You say, well, I didn't really see it like that at the time. You think, Christ alive. Quite harrowing though, isn't it? Like she's having to attack him with a bloody poker and all sorts.
It was
quite scary.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really you can't really pretend anything other than what is happening in that scene.
No.
But I think David Whittaker is known for liking to put Barbara in sexual danger, which he does in various stories, including The Crusade. And I wondered if this is his input, because it's not the kind of thing that Nation does very often.
What did you think of Sabitha?
Yes, it was one of those performances that kind of the first episode she's in, I didn't really think, you didn't really notice her, but then as the story goes on and the character assumes more significance, then actually that was a really good, robust bit of casting there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought, in all seriousness, I thought she was actually one of the better cast members of the guest cast.
There's quite a lovely moment, which is not the best thing she does here. It's when Altos is forced to tell Yartek that the Doctor's got the final key, and she does a very 60s terrified look to camera, which is absolutely hilarious.
That was a belter, wasn't it? The other thing with Barbara, just to circle back on Barbara, the bit where she's trapped under a net and there's this thing descending above her with these kind of cheap tin chicken feet. What was that about?
A bit wobbly, weren't they?
They were a bit feeble looking, and she, considering the amount of the story she spends in peril, either from this man who maybe he just wanted to beat her up. Let's hope that was preferable. I don't know. To that, there is a real. I don't know if it's just put the glamorous assistant in any kind of peril to make the rescue look that much more manly and wonderful. But you just, again, you think Jacqueline Hill could have been better served by something, but
she's a lot more vulnerable in this story than she's in most of the others, really.
Yeah,
I mean, when she's
absolutely.
more photon, she sort of breaks down and cries for a little while, doesn't she? That, and then she does quite a lot of screaming for help in this, which she doesn't normally do. She's got quite a lot of agency. She gets herself out of trouble a lot of the time.
Another thing that struck me about Basil. He says this line as he's trying to get to her, saying, "I'll have to fatten you up." So I'm not sure if he was gonna do something really gruesome or something really gruesome like cannibalism. There is a bit of a theme of sort of unwarranted groping. The statue with the very obviously human arms that comes out and grabs hold of Iain and Barbara as well, I think.
Yeah.
And does the sort of spinny thing. That was
there's an
unusual.
Unfortunate first take with that, apparently, where of course the prop guy behind this thing can't see what Jacqueline Wright is doing. Jacqueline Wright? Jacqueline not Wright. That's the surname of the character.
Wrong.
Jacqueline Hill. Jacqueline Hill. Yes, he grabs wildly and grabs bits of Jacqueline Hill that he shouldn't be grabbing.
Oh my good lord.
Unusually for Doctor Who, they actually retook that bit.
Yeah, well, just as well.
Given the stuff that gets through, you have to wonder why they bothered with that.
I'll just go with it, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
See what's coming next.
We've got this guy in this shed in this ice field next. He's going to do it a lot worse.
That'll take everyone's mind off this, but
we won't when it comes to the edit, we'll make it look a bit more tasteful. But the kind of uncut 8-hour sequence was just appalling.
What do we make of the Ice Knights and that whole sequence with the rope bridge and all the rest of it?
They're a bit knights who say "neh," aren't they?
They are a little bit, yeah. I think I remember one of the commentaries on one of the other classic series DVDs where Peter Davison's talking about his earliest memory of Doctor Who, and I'm pretty sure that it's those knights from this story.
Wow.
But I may be misremembering, but I'm pretty sure that was a little factoid that he threw out in one of his commentary appearances. Apparently, according to Ray Kuzik, they ran out of money when it came to that set, so he had to borrow the walls and the rope bridge from another production.
The other production in question being Zorro and the world's shortest rope bridge. I mean, yeah, you could see very clearly it was just some kind of cling film on the walls that, to be fair, did work quite effectively.
I thought it looked okay.
It looked frozen. It looked icy. It was great.
Yeah.
The rope bridge was not long.
No, I love their reaction when they safely get back over again. Oh yeah, by the way, Iain, you absolute div.
Yeah.
Leaving rapey guy on the other side just to be able to cut the bridge off.
How stupid was
well
that?
done.
We've all done that thing with you've got a fox and a chicken and some corn on a boat, and you cross but you can't leave that. Don't leave him on one side. Oh,
he's a science teacher.
But when
he hasn't done that bit, has he?
That's probably Susan's only sort of big moment where she actually manages to get across and fix the bridge. So fair play to her, she gets to do that.
It only took her 14 minutes to climb one metre across a large, whatever that was, rubber carrot.
And I love their reaction when the
shriek of polystyrene.
Yeah, so the first one falls down the pit, and then the other three come out, and they're looking wildly around. Like, what's going on? I don't understand.
It was. I mean, again, to the average 8-year-old viewer, that would have been edge of your sofa exciting. Oh my god!
Oh yeah.
To the jaded eyes of some middle-aged men 100 years later, perhaps it looks a little poor. Who can say?
You may have a point.
Let us, however, at this point, circle back because we mentioned him very briefly there. What did we think of Ian Chesterton in this story?
I thought he was okay. I mean, he does lead he and Jackie Hill do tend to sort of take the lead roles because Hartnoll's off on his hollybobs. It's all right. I mean, I suppose because they've got such a big cast, it does get spread out a bit more. So it's not just the focus isn't quite so much on the TARDIS crew, is it? They sort of split them up and what have you. I thought it was okay.
He makes more mistakes than usual, I think, in this. But what I quite like is when he leaves Basil on the other side and he just dismantles the bridge and chucks it back at him. I do like the way he's sort of angry with everybody because he's made a mistake, which I thought was quite a sort of human reaction to that. And that's not in the script. I don't think that's coming from the actor. I quite like that, but he does make mistakes all the time. You remember that bit when in the place with all the traps in the Screaming Jungle episode? Mm-hmm. He's looking at this kind of pickaxe thing for ages when Barbara's trying to get his attention, and it doesn't notice that there's a chain on the end, and then he lifts the thing off the floor, the chain gets pulled, and then suddenly the sort of cage falls down on top of him. What have you been doing for the last 5 minutes that you didn't look at the other end of the pickaxe you were holding?
Although it was rather handy that the solution to finding the key was a chemical equation, which, seeing as he's a science teacher, that was quite handy, wasn't it?
Well, that really does lead me on to a point I was going to make, where, as you yourself have said several times, that the show had much more of an educational remit in the early days, and a lot of the problem I had, I'll be honest, what I've written down under Iain is I've written the word prick. Now, he has to deliver a lot of kind of extraneous information or tangents that are just clearly designed to inform and educate children. Oh, is that a cyclotron? You know, that kind of moment. Or there's a bit with Barbara where they're sort of almost jizzing at how old the rock is, or why it must be blah blah blah. You know, and you just think, will you stop being such a tedious show off prick? There, I've said it. And just kind of, you know, get going. Just become part of this. Just crack on with the story, mate. And I think it's interesting that no companion since Iain and Barbara have had to do anything other than just, you know, be themselves in the story in the moment. But these guys, by having to do that heavy lifting of having the little educational moments, I think that can occasionally really pull you out of the action and
it's a little bit jarring sometimes.
Yeah, it just doesn't work for me. And obviously, you know, I'm watching it now for the first time, which might come as a surprise, Jim, but I've not really done the Hartnoll stuff, or indeed much of the Troughton stuff, and Pertwee can go piss up a rope. So this is all kind of new to me, and obviously I can't watch this now with anything other than the eyes of someone in the year we're recording this, which, let's say it's 2030, because by the time we actually put these episodes out, it will. And it's sometimes it is just really, really difficult to you know, see it as the same show, because it's not quite a pure drama yet. It's trying to do lots of different things, and most of them it's trying to do right here in this story.
Yeah, it's a bit sort of Reithian at the moment, isn't it? They're trying to get the educational elements in. I think the Daleks knocks out unheard, not quite yet, but the Daleks changes the nature, you know, the story, and the Daleks themselves change the nature of the show, and it becomes something that is less educational, or it's educational by accident rather than you know, people trotting out lines that you might hear in a classroom.
I think we spoke to Dave last time. He said about how they'd done some audience research, and the answer they kept getting back was, we want the sci-fi, we don't want the historical stuff. So
yeah,
I think you're certainly echoing what they were saying at the time.
Yeah, it becomes more of a kind of science fiction adventure series, and less of the thing that was supposed to kind of teach people undercover of a story at the weekends, which of course is a real cheat, because you've done all that all week. You don't want it when you're watching your favourite program on Saturday night.
No one wants stealth facts delivered in their entertainment. Heaven forfend.
They're not that stealthy either, are they, to be fair?
But... Well, it's only slightly more stealthy than Blue Peter for that, isn't it?
I do like the idea of the keys and the quest, as you were saying earlier. You do love a good quest, and I like that, and I think it appeals to the sort of storytelling that I like, and the scale of it, although the budget can't quite live up to it, I think it keeps you going. I think there's enough there. I didn't get bored watching it. I know Iain likes to watch these things all in one hit, and I think that's sometimes problematic with the really old stuff, but
yeah, it can be.
I didn't really find myself getting bored at any point.
Yeah, well, it's always changing venue, isn't it? and I think that makes. I mean, it
just keeps it fresh.
It spreads the budget more thinly because you don't have 3 or 4 sets that you use for 4 weeks. You keep having to change them, over the time. But that does keep the interest up, I think. And the other thing about all this is I love the kind of exploratory nature of the William Hartnoll stories. It's not one of these things. We've landed on this planet. I know about this planet. I'm going to tell you all about it. And with McCoy, it's I brought you here because of a particular reason. So we're exploring along with them, and you get lots more places to explore in your 6 episodes than you would normally. So I think it wins on that score.
I agree. Going back to the sort of guest cast, I think I might be wrong in saying this, but I think this is the start of what will become a very familiar trend in the stories by Terry Nation. He's got a character called Tarrant.
Yes.
Not quite Tarrant, but he does like to put a Tarrant into his stories. Pretty much every other story. He does it in Blake 7 as well. He just loves that name.
Well, apparently, Tarrant is his wife's sort of pet name for him. So that's why it keeps turning up. I don't think the characters, who gives that name are kind of him in the drama or anything like that. But he does like using the name. But I think because of that reason.
That is interesting.
And then you come to the sort of courtroom stuff for the final segment of the story. So not only are they changing the locations, but they're kind of changing up the whole sort of genre of the show. So it starts off as a quest and it ends up being a sort of court procedural. I think Hartnoll does quite a decent job of delivering the lines. He actually gets them right.
Yeah.
And he's got a really good presence in the courtroom. I think he does a pretty decent job.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, if Iain had him defending him at the beginning of this story before his holiday, I think his heart would be sinking. But by the time Hartnoll comes back from holiday, he's raring to go.
Actually, Your Honour, I move to replace my counsel with Susan Foreman, who will now be screaming my defence.
Desperation.
She'll just stand there she'll stand there saying, "Grandfather," continually for 25 minutes. See if that sways the jury.
But so obviously, we're watching these stories through in order from the beginning, and I would say that this is probably, for my money, Hartnoll's finest hour thus far. The last couple of episodes, he's really, you can see he's happy, he's enjoying what he's doing, and he's really having fun, and I really did enjoy that aspect of it.
Yes, he's got a bit of a twinkle in his eye.
A twinkle, yes.
Yes, and as a character, they've come through, those first 3 stories where they're pretty rough with each other, aren't they? Emotionally and sometimes physically, but they go through Marco Polo, and that's 7 weeks in our time, but it's months in the actual story, and by that they're a much kind of stronger unit by the end of that, and they're all fighting for each other in this one, which they hadn't been really up until this one.
That's a good point. Do we think Iain and Barbara have started having it off yet?
Oh, I should think so. Yeah.
This is an ongoing thread in our conversations,
I couldn't
Jim.
pinpoint any sort of moment where it happened. I know Matt Barber was adamant that he could sort of freeze frame the exact second where they slope off to the food room to have a quick
knee trembler.
Well, I thought Altos had done a bit of a quick cock block there and stopped that from happening. But.
Well, just him and his raw, rugged manliness being in the same room does throw Chesterton into sharp relief. But while we're on the subject of weird, slightly sexual things, what did we think of the young Fiona Walker?
Oh, Lady Painford.
Yeah.
Lady Painford.
Yeah.
I thought she was pretty good.
Okay. Yeah.
I thought she was amazing and a lot better. I guess this is going to be script based, but she was a lot better served in this and gave a much better performance in this than she did some 24 years later in Silver Nemesis, which we'll gloss over that one, won't we, Mark?
That's the 25th anniversary special. That's the one that everyone loves.
Yeah.
It's a cornerstone.
Yep,
Can't ignore that one.
I'm washing my hair that week.
Seminal Doctor Who.
Yes, it's seminal.
You're the big McCoy fan.
I know, but even that one has got some real shit in it.
It's some semolina, Doctor Who.
No, I think in this she was, because obviously the fully realised role that she had called for a degree of steel and even menace in it, and I think she was
a duplicitous harridan.
She certainly
wasn't
was. She certainly was. I like that, duplicitous harridan. I'll be using that on my Tinder profile.
Excellent.
Yeah, no,
that's your drag name.
yeah, yeah, it really is.
I thought it was Ophelia Buns.
Well, I'm changing it now, aren't I? Now that this glorious new thing. No, I think
Felicia Noshov.
Okay, the rest of
this
this
is gonna
week's
get the
episode is
rating.
just going to be some people telling me what my drag name should be. So if you want to maybe scroll across on your podcaster of choice and listen to the One Show or the Krynoid Podcast, feel free and come back.
Ooh, good idea.
And there'll still be...
If you have a suggestion for Ian's drag name, just get in touch at mailbagofrassilon@gmail.com.
Carry on, guys.
I think we've upset
I
no,
thought she was really good.
I'm just trying to kill time while I think of more drag names.
I did find, sort of skip to the end, I did find it relatively unlikely that anyone with working eyes could not tell that Yartek was pretending to be Arbiter.
Oh, when he had the hood of his robe up.
Yeah.
That sort of classic, I've just come out of the shower, no one's put their contacts in yet.
But of course it's that good double bluff, because then
head.
Ian gets that moment to prove that he's not a complete dullard by turning around and saying, well, actually, I knew it was him all along, I gave him the fake key.
Yeah, and that was nice, and I'd kind of forgotten, because obviously I read the Target book as well, 30 years ago, but I didn't remember that was coming, so I did spend a couple of minutes there thinking he'd been fooled by this pitiful subterfuge of putting
it did sort of reinforce my opinion that Ian was actually a decent chap after all, because I was beginning to think, oh, you absolute dullard.
Yeah.
But no, he saved the day.
Yeah, he did.
So this is the whole problem, is what makes up a Vord. I mean, when you see that kind of the wetsuit of the one that's been dissolved, you think, well, they're just wearing wetsuits. If that's the case, why doesn't Yartek take his wetsuit off with this massive helmet before pretending to be Arbiter? It's just bizarre.
That's a very good point.
Sorry, I just had to chuckle at massive helmet.
That's my drag name. No, hang on.
Only when you're wearing Altos's outfit.
Yeah. Scrawny helmet, I think. You're right. So do we think that the Vord are a sort of shiny, smooth, black race of very thin men? Or are they people in costumes? And as you just said,
I think they're people in costumes. They've got to be people in costumes,
think?
Surely.
So why didn't he take his silly hat off?
Exactly.
He's a buffoon. And why has he got an Indian accent as well?
Yeah, I wondered about that. That was
it's odd, isn't it?
Yeah, that was inappropriate. I didn't like that.
Cultural appropriation,
just a bit. But yeah, I mean, so in the end, because I think that final episode, you've got, I want to say it's split kind of 15 minutes still in the courtroom story, getting Ian cleared of the murder, and by the way, hiding the missing key in the murder weapon itself. That was a brilliant idea. I thought,
it's great, isn't it?
I was racking my brains thinking, have they done that in Jonathan Creek yet? And if that ever comes back for a 6th series, maybe that's the way forward. I don't know. But then you had sort of 10 minutes to wrap everything up. Back with well, not with Arbitan because he's dead.
No, he was.
But with the machine and so on. And I think it was kind of perfunctory, and what I think they really needed was a little recap, because obviously if you'd been watching this 25 minutes per week, this had been going on for 6
Yeah.
weeks. It would have been nice to have a little reminder of what the machine did and why it was deadly, and why it was a bad thing to let the bad guy turn it on. But on the whole, I think it did a lot in that last 10 minutes with Ian's subterfuge, with the machine misfiring, with the sort of running back to the TARDIS. I think it ended very strongly.
Yeah, it's quite a satisfying ending, I think, isn't it? And you get the customary 15 minutes of saying goodbye to all the characters before they get to the TARDIS.
Yeah, God.
Which Trout never stood for that, did he? They just left before anyone turned around.
Yeah, get out of there. Don't say goodbye.
I think that's why it became a trope later on, is that by the time it was Tom, he was like, well, I'm going to be here all day if I have to say goodbye to all of these.
I hate them all anyway.
Yeah.
So, do we have anything left that we want to say about this story before we wrap it up and give it a score?
It's entertaining deliberately and by accident, I would say.
Yeah.
And there's quite a few sort of unintentionally funny moments, like the cardboard Vord falling into a bucket. I love that bit.
Yeah.
in part one.
Ah!
Very unlikely scream as he falls into this bucket. And the nodding judge. Those three judges in the courtroom.
They were really over nodding, weren't they? Like they had something wrong with their necks.
If I expect them to see on a parcel shelf of a car, wouldn't you? Just like
oh yeah,
nodding away.
Did Ian do the murder? Oh yes.
Oh yeah. But yeah, no, it's thoroughly entertaining, and yeah, as I say, not always intentionally, but that adds to the fun, in my opinion.
Well, let's give it a score then. We were going to rate this out of 10. I will come to Ian first.
Ooh, and I haven't given this any thought. So obviously it's a really marked counterpoint to things like Marco Polo, where it's a much more orderly bit of storytelling. This was kind of all over the place, seat of your pants, breathless, changed genres. It was cheap, there were a lot of mistakes in it, but it was more kind of exciting and more immediate. So I'm going to give this a... Can we go half marks, or do I have to go for whole numbers only?
You can mark it however you like, as long as it's out of 10.
Okay, I'm going to go 7.5.
Ooh,
okay.
That's higher than I thought.
Okay. Jim?
I'm going to go 8.5, I think. I can see the faults in it, but it only makes me love it more.
Yeah, it's a fun story. Maybe it's had one of those kind of revisions over the years that we get on certain stories, because I know back in the olden days when I used to read stuff like The Key to Time, which was the follow-up to A Celebration.
Oh, yeah.
By
Peter Haining.
Peter Haining, that's the chap. There was all this received fan wisdom, this was great, this was awful, and I think really until you watch it for yourself, I'd much rather just make my own mind up. And I find it quite fun. It's a bit of a romp. I like the fact that it changes each week, so you get a different location. I admire the ambition, even if it doesn't always reflect with what you see on screen. Yeah, I'm going to give it a 7.
Fantastic. So I'm going to very quickly fire a sort of parting shot at Jim, if I may, because obviously we've spoken at great length, and I think with great restraint, about the Keys of Marinus. But what's your go-to era, Jim? What's your who of choice?
Well, I'm going to have to be very boring, I'm afraid. I'm going to say the Hinchcliffe era. I was exactly the right age for it on broadcast. Tom Baker was very much my doctor by then. I do have vague memories of The Pert. But,
yeah.
But Tom Baker was very much my doctor. And those first 3 seasons are just golden, in my opinion. I mean, again, not everything's perfect throughout, but it's just a really solid era of the show. I know a lot of people feel the same way, so sorry to give a boring answer.
There are no boring answers, there are only uncontroversial answers.
Sorry to be so uncontroversial. But the more I watch of the 60s stuff, it still feels, although I've seen everything now, it still feels a slightly more sort of undiscovered country to me. So I'm always really interested to watch the black and white stuff as well. I don't think it's going to shift, my preference, my favourite era. But I do really like going back in that direction rather than going in the other direction into the future after Hinchcliffe.
Don't know what you mean.
How very dare you.
Cool.
There's a lot to be said for the Williams era, but we won't go down that whole rabbit hole. I think we should get a bit of feedback now, because you guys have been fantastic again. I put out the call to arms on the social media, and I said, is there any love for the Keys of Marinus? And you guys responded.
I've got mail.
So, Ian, who have you heard from there?
Well, in our bulging mail sack this week, the first message I have is from Andy Moore, who says, of the story, ambition often outstrips resources, but I'm a sucker for a quest story, and it's good to see a planet that actually has different environments. Which is a great point that we echoed earlier with the world building. The Sirens of Audio say, I love this story. I particularly enjoy the last 2 episodes. The First Doctor thrives in the courtroom. Linton Keneally says, really good story, even if the production values aren't so good. And I think we can all...
This is all sounding very familiar.
It is. I feel like we've managed to have exactly the same opinion as everybody else, which...
Consensus.
It's
I think it's a fair-minded
Yeah.
opinion. It's not like, no one's really hating on it so far anyway.
Good.
Paul Quinn says, American Horror Stories Gimp Man's secret past revealed. I'm not ashamed of it, says latex-clad weirdo. Again,
nice.
yes. Ben Ripley, a very simple reply this. I love it. And he's given it 3 exclamation marks. That's a lot of love.
No, he really does love it.
That's a lot of love
Fair
for
play to him.
Hartnoll, really, isn't it? And the final one I have is from the Captain, who says, it was my introduction to the classic series. Plus, it's a bloody good adventure anthology to boot.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Thanks for that. Right, I have the fantastic Jeff Goddard. If you've not encountered him before, I know him mainly from Twitter as @CityOfJeff.
It's a
He's
brilliant
a bit of a
handle,
legend round these parts. Yeah, he's great. So, Jeff says, I adore the Keys of Marinus. It's a story with a real scope and scale and a forward momentum that propels the story along at a rate which ensures the viewer is never left bored. There are so many ideas that the world of Marinus feels like a real world, with different continents or areas which their own distinct culture, especially when we get to the trial of Ian toward the end. Going from light to dark in a matter of scenes, particularly with the Vassor-Barbara section, this is probably my favourite nation story, and clearly the template for the chase in the next season. Spoilers! Also, Fiona Walker is wicked in it. Special shout out as well to the Vord. They were clearly trying to replicate the impact of the Daleks, but sadly men in rubber suits were no match for Nation's far more successful creations, especially when seen tripping over their own flipper feet. But there is definitely something about them. Stephen Hartnoll is great as Yartek though, and of course provides another great performance as the deranged crew member John in the Sensorites a little later.
Yes.
He's Spoiler City, isn't he? I'm going to have to change his name to Jeff the Spoiler. I think
that's my drag name.
I think one of the reasons I have such an affection for the Series 11 story, The Ghost Monument, is it reminds me so much of the Keys of Marinus, and that is meant as a compliment.
That's an interesting point.
Some chancer called Ian Martin says, Jeff, what a great note, your enthusiasm has swayed me. And he says, I can't deny it's a bit ropey and wobbly around the edges, but I think that just makes me love it more.
Oh.
So, yeah, thanks for that, Jeff.
Yeah.
Really, we're getting some great feedback. One last one from me. The rather lovely Nathan Bottomley from Flight Through Entirety says, I'm with Jeff. It's so much fun, wonderfully ridiculous in a B-movie sort of way. It moves along quickly for a 60s serial, and it's full of memorable images, and Fiona Walker is magnificent. Excellent. Thank you, Nathan. And Jim, what have you got for us?
Splendid. Yes, I'll start with Jeff Waddle. Jeff says, probably Mr. Nation's best script. Wide in scope, only let down by the lack of money and ability to fulfil the imagination of it. But better to try and not fully succeed than not bother. Though still don't know what was achieved, as the conscience of Marinus was destroyed at the end, so nothing changed. Still good escapist nonsense, though. That's a good point. It doesn't get into the hands of the board, but it doesn't get into anyone else's hands. But no, a doctor has a word about that, doesn't he? Saying like, man should make their own decisions about that kind of thing. So maybe that's the lesson at the end.
Yeah.
On to 42 to Doomsday, our Antipodean podcasting
G'day.
cousins. Yes. They say, well, it tries something different every week, but it's a struggle, to be honest. Well, that's wrong. But thanks anyway for sending that in. Staying that side of the globe, we have David Kitchen from the
hey, David.
Hey, Dave.
The Doctor Who Show podcast, of course. Dave says, I really like it. Some classic Terry Nation as he focuses on excitement and adventure. Budget not quite up to it, and really big plot holes if you look too closely. But just sit back and enjoy the adventure and set pieces, and you won't go wrong. Absolutely. And we have Tim, who's at Doctor Who Podcasters.
If you've not listened to Tim's podcast, it's really good. It's called the Missing Episodes Podcast. And I think if you're taking this journey through the 60s stuff, I think it would be a really good eye-opener for a lot of people who aren't that up to speed on the missing episodes. So check that out. It's well worth a listen.
Oh, good, yeah.
Sorry,
I
Jim.
tried that, but I will do. Tim says, negative bin it. Which is a 3-word review.
Well,
yeah. Which seems a trifle harsh to me. But then, we're all different.
Well, it's nice to end on a positive note, isn't
it? Someone to do E-sharp or something quickly.
Well, thank you all so much for your feedback. It's really great to hear what you guys think of the stories that we're covering, and please keep it coming in future episodes. That's great. Jim, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure to have you on the show.
Likewise, I've had a lot of fun, and it's a pleasure to spend time with two splendid chaps like yourselves.
Jim, where can viewers hear more of your voice?
You can hear huge long stretches of my voice and that of my podcasting compadre Martin on the Krynoid Podcast. That's Krynoid, named after the killer root vegetable thingy. From the Baker era, Tom Baker era. Yes, we do a classic Doctor Who story every month, and we go in absurd depth and detail on it. But if that sounds like that might be up your street, then give us a try on all the usual channels, please.
It is a great show, well worth checking out.
God bless you.
Well, thanks again, Jim.
Thank you.
So, we'll be back again next time with the Aztecs.
Until then, cheerio.
Ta-ta.
Bye.
I love that. Understated. Bye. And goodbye. And goodbye.
Bye, Jeffrey. If you'd like to get in touch, you can email us at mailbagofrassilon@gmail.com. We're also on Twitter @TimeEndSpacePod, and you can also find us on Facebook. If you want to leave some audio feedback, there is a link in the show notes. You can use your phone or your computer and leave up to 60 seconds of feedback, or if you're listening via the Anchor website, you can click on the message button and leave your audio. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you to Momo Tempo for providing our theme music.